Hi, this is Bravo 21. I'm a glider pilot and a sim developer, and this is a video for the Soaring Club, which is my home on the interwebs where we have very active multiplayer gliding in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024. We're trying to transition to 2024, but it's kind of hard work. This is introduction to a bit of a outline of what it's like sim soaring in 2024. You know, the happy bits, not the tricky bits so much. So here we go. 2024, you can see on the screen. We click free flight. We're going to choose a plane. Do not use the stock planes. There's in 2024, if you're going to start somewhere, start with maybe the LS4. In this case, you click gliders. These are on flightsim.to mostly, these planes. LS4, K7, Pirat, JS318. I'm going to show you the JS318 because I'm going to talk a little bit about the Vario motors and nav instruments, and they're most fully equipped on the JS3 here. Okay, so pick the plane. Then you have to hit configure for two reasons. One is you are going to set the launch method. We have a custom tow plane also on flightsim.to, which is the Robin tow plane. You can just find it by searching for it. And the trouble is these other tow, this one down here, the DA40 is actually okay. The rest of them are a bit shite in terms of towing planes. The AI is kind of good. It's quite a fun thing to do, but they're just too weak in 2024. They were transferred over from 2020. Anyway, so I'm picking the Robin tow plane. I'm going. I'm not going to go back yet. I'm going to choose a livery, and this is saying I've got Waldo selected, whatever that is. I'm going to choose the B21 livery. Which looks directionally similar. I think that's what we were on anyway. So I don't know what that Waldo means there. Save and back. Great. Save and back. So we've picked the plane. For the departure, I'll show you what we've been doing in 2024 because this EFB just has not been working since 2024 was released. There's an idea it might be working in terms of loading PLN files in Sim Update 3, but it's just fingers crossed. At this stage, we thought it was going to be for release, then we thought it was going to be SU1, then we thought it was going to be SU2, now we think it's going to be SU3. So we're understandably not entirely confident. So here's what we'll be doing instead, which is a flight plan. We all fly, this is going to make sense in a second, we all fly the same flight plans when we're flying multiplayer, or you can fly them offline and you fly them, and you can compare your flight with other people that have flown them the same. So I'm going to show you in this folder here, actually. This is just my downloads folder from the browser. This is the flight plan we're going to load. We've got a couple of ways of doing it. This, I will show you. I'll make this smaller again. This is something we use a fair bit. It's called the B21 Task Planner. I did write it. And it's just a web page. You can see the URL up there. And you can take a flight plan and drag and drop it onto the flight planner. And then you'll see the task there. And we tend to look at this very carefully. So we'll be taking off from this airport down here. The wind is going to be from the southeast. And that means this ridge is going to be working. We're going to use that to get going. Maximum start 3,000. And you can see these little descriptors on each of these waypoints. Probably difficult for you to see at the scale I'm at here. But anyway, maximum 3,000 feet. Then we'll fly, go around waypoint 1. And I'll show you a little bit of that. Anyway, so that's the task planner. And equally important is the thing we use as a logger, and that records IGC files, so just text files with a suffix .igc, which is the FAI aviation standard for recording a flight track, latitude, longitude, time, and altitude, for what it's worth. And here is how we've been loading PLN files into Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is in the same way I just dragged and dropped it onto the task planner. Here is me dragging and dropping the same file onto the planner. There you go. And this is telling us the ICAO code of the airport, LFKJ20. All right, so getting it in there is just a workaround because this thing isn't working. So I'll move this to LFKJ, okay, and it's runway 20. I'm going to now search for it up here. LFKJ is this place. You have to move the mouse away to get it to disappear. And then we want runway 20, which is here. Okay, so we've got a plane. We've got a departure runway. The logger is containing the complete task, the PLN file. I dragged and dropped it here. This is all going to make sense in a second. Then we're going to flight conditions, and for our multiplayer flying, we will have set standard weather, and we have standard presets. They're on flightsim.to as well. And you have to install these in the weather presets folder before you start Microsoft Flight Simulator, but you only need to install them once. And you see we've got a complete set. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for scattered clouds, 10 knots from the southeast. Few clouds, partly cloudy, strong clouds, scattered clouds. Okay, so I'm going to look for, you can see what we've done is we've created weather files for every possible wind direction. Here you go. SSC, Sim Soaring Club, version 3 of our weather, 071. That's the code for this particular file to make sure you got the exact right one. Scattered clouds, 6,000 foot cloud base, southeast winds with those winds at 10 knots. Okay, and then we'll have agreed a start time in the in-sim start time. So what time of day do we want it to be in the sim? And let's say we've agreed it's 2 p.m. So we'll set this to 2 p.m. These sliders are pretty awful. Oh, but it does actually land on 2 p.m., not most of the others. You can use the pluses and the minuses. Okay, so we've got the weather and the time. Then we come back to here. The time is here. You can't completely trust it. What you can trust when you're flying is, this is the logger again, it displays what's the local time in the sim. And it's saying the local time inside the sim at the moment is 12 noon. And it's reading that from the variable inside the sim where the sim telling what the local time is. So this is bullshit at the moment. And it's just showing that's UTC time, which is not the local time there. But this will become local time as soon as we load in. I'll show you that. So I can hit start flight now. And we're going to land on the runway. We're going to have a Robin tow plane. And I'm going to have the JS3. And we're going to have southeast winds with scattered clouds. So on runway 20, that's going to be coming over my port wing. There's going to be a crosswind coming over my port wing. Oop. This is going to load, but quick reminder, here's the task. We're going to be facing on runway 200, which is pointing down this way. That's why we're going to have the wind come in over our port wing. We're going to do an aero tow, go up, and then we're going to fly over to the start, and you'll see what I do there. That's Jimmy holding the wing. Looks like we're ready, but we're not. We're still waiting for the tow plane to spawn in. Click ready to fly. Jimmy is standing next to us. That is some weird noise. Let me have a look around. There's some kind of turbine spooling up somewhere. I can't see it, but hey, whatever. Get back inside the cockpit. Turn the ignition on. Not the ignition. Turn the nav panel on. And I'm going to be talking about these variometers and this nav panel. And can you see it's got, this is the task. The Corsica task. There's the start there. I can zoom in a bit. See, there's the start there. There's the hill. We can change the map. Change it onto the Google Relief Map. So I don't know if you can tell there. I know it's a little bit small. If I meant to set this up before I recorded this video. Can you see that task is basically that one that was on the planner, okay? But now it's in sim, and we are facing this way because we're on runway 200. I'll try and unzoom. I'll do that quicker. I shall waggle the rudder. You'll see me waggling the rudder. Jimmy is going to start waving his arm. That's going to set the tow plane off. And we'll be off in a second. But this tow plane's got more oomph than the stock tow plane. It's the ground friction was increased in 2024 from 2020, but they didn't update the tow planes. So now they struggle to pull anything. But this Robin is more powerful than it would be in real life. But it takes off in about the normal distance, but then it will climb quite a lot faster. This display on the left here, you can see my mouse cursor is in red, and that's because we've taken off, but my gear is still down, so I'm going to hit the G key and raise the gear. Okay, that's gear up. and we're doing 80 knots, so I should be in flap 2. Now we're doing 90 knots, I should be in flap 1. Then you can see me following the tow plane in front. It's going to fly a pattern. I'm flying away from the start point at the moment because I'm looking at the map. Great scenery in 2024. Ooh. Oh, we're good. And I should apologise. Anybody that's looking at my videos on the B21 channel or the Ian Lewis channel, I haven't produced one for 6 months, and that's because we haven't really got new stuff in 2024. We've been kind of fixing stuff, trying to get stuff from 2020 working in 2024. So this plane was already in 2020, and it's been updated. I've improved the nav panel. Necessarily needed to apply some tweaks to the flight model because the flight models are slightly different for no good reason. Yeah, but we haven't introduced a lot of new stuff really. But if our objective was 2024 was just 2020 with better graphics, then we're kind of doing okay. There's still a couple of gotchas we're working our way around in 2024, but you can have some fun flights in it. Multiplayer is challenged because at the moment we're not getting these clouds that you can see. Everybody that spawns in gets clouds in different positions, which is pretty much the first thing you need to get right for multiplayer gliding, because we climb underneath each of those clouds. You can see there is a decent thermal actually, the dark ones, the ones with the dark bottoms. Okay, so we're flying pretty much straight towards the start point now. Although we're nowhere near it. The beeping noise you can hear is this Vario. It beeps when it's going up. I know it sounds annoying if you're not used to it. The pilot of the tow plane wagging his wings is saying pull off.
Cable released.
So I've released. Okay, and possibly as a relief for you guys, the Vario will stop beeping. So I'll talk about the instruments in here a little bit. Okay, so for gliding, it said that the most important instrument is the variometer, and that's primarily this instrument here. There is a second variometer I'll talk about down here. And this variometer's got this red needle, and the red needle is basically telling us, are we going up or down? That's kind of what we want to know. So if I open the spoilers, for example, see that red indicator's come on. If I show you my wing, there's the spoilers open there. If I close the spoilers again, okay. You need those spoilers, otherwise you wouldn't be able to land. Anyway, yeah, so if you look at the red needle, if I open the spoilers, I start coming down. If I close the spoiler, I stop coming down as fast. And this, if we fly modestly, I'll get in the right flap, so 60 knots. We're not really coming down much at all. So with this plane, we'll have a glide ratio of something like 56:1. So if you're 1 kilometer up, i.e. 3,300 feet, you can fly 56 kilometers before you touch the ground, which is pretty impressive to me. They're very, very streamlined, these planes. So back talking about the variometers, where this gauge is basically telling you are you going up or down, it does apply a cancellation effect that if you're going up to a gaining height, you'd think the needle would say you're going up, you're going up, you're going up, you're going up. But actually at the same time, we're slowing down. Okay, so we're gaining potential energy, but at the cost of slowing down. And that red needle on that variometer instrument I was just pointing to here is pretty clever, right? And it can do that calculation. And if you're gaining height but losing energy in your speed, it will deduct that from the height you're gaining. You know, there's very straightforward physical equations that tell you what the potential energy is, what your kinetic energy is. And the same is true. So I am descending now, and I'm speeding up. So because I'm going faster, I will be burning more energy. This has been confused a little bit because there is some lift in the sim. But it didn't show me dropping like a rock because it knows I'm accelerating. I'm descending, but I'm accelerating. So again, it deducts that from the needle movement. So that is what is called a total energy variometer, and it is completely different from a power plane vertical speed indicator, which as you move the needle like this, the needle would be moving all over, absolutely all over the place. It would be dominated by your movement of the stick and controlling the elevators. It would be showing huge lift now, and then it would be showing huge sink now in a power plane. Whereas that red needle is doing a total energy calculation, and the needle is showing that, which is compensated. It's also called a compensated vario. Okay. I'll come back to this, but the blue needle is not really a needle, it's an indicator for something called the McCready setting. And it's you telling the plane how fast you're going to be flying between waypoints in a slightly complicated way, but I'll come back to that. Okay, so that's that red needle, that's fine, you know. And when we come into thermal, with a bit like we will in a minute, where should we go? We'll go over there. I'm going to mosey more over in that direction. I'm not that far from the start here. Or I'll get to this ridge. One or the other. Yeah, so see that, sorry, that black cloud there? There's going to be lift under there. And there might be lift closer to us as well. Let's see how we get on. Right. So let's talk about this needle a little bit. It's another variometer. And this variometer is reading the reading from this variometer, so it knows the total energy sink rate or climb rate that you've got, which is your sink rate, but factoring in some compensation for whether you're accelerating or decelerating in terms of airspeed. And it also nets out, this has got built into it, the profile of the glider, which is at each speed you fly, what does the glider naturally sink at? Because if you're flying at, say, 60 knots, it'll be sinking at about 1 knot. This is in knots, this gauge, as is this one. You can change it to meters per second if you're German or something. But what it will do is it will deduct the sink that the glider would otherwise be doing. So the net effect is it's showing you the air sinking or rising outside the glider. So this is showing we are flying through a thermal at the moment. And I can turn, so you see my height at the moment is 2,850 feet. Here you go, here's how gliding works. We circle in this stuff. I can turn round and round like this, in that rising air, underneath whatever cloud is above us. See, we'll have gained 100 feet by the time I complete this turn. The thermals in Microsoft Flight Simulator, typically in the weather we set, can be considerably stronger than this. Let's say double. You know, normally we're aiming to circle in sort of 8 knots plus, which would be a great soaring day in the real world. But there's no reason for us to fly in crappy weather. So let's take that as done. I'm going to head over to the start point, and where it says maximum height at the start is 3,000 feet. You can see I'm at 3,000 feet now, so nominally I'm going to zoom in this nav panel here. I'll zoom in so you can see the gauge a bit better. And we now have the wind. If you can see this arrow on the nav panel, that is showing us where the wind's coming from and what wind speed is it. And it's currently 4 knots coming up my starboard wing, blowing me against this ridge to our left. And when that wind hits that ridge, it will start going up the ridge and generating lift. So you can see that. Let's say I fly straight over to it a bit. This is more fun doing it in a sim than it is watching on a video, I think. I've got one more thing to talk about. I'm going to do this start. I'm going to get lift from this hillside. See, I told you. Slow down a bit. So this is really quite realistic. So thank you, Asobo. If you're on the upwind side of a ridge. See, the wind is blowing up this ridge. And if you look at the strength of the wind now, it's 10 knots. You saw that was what was listed in our weather file. And I could potentially have a problem because I'm 200 feet above the maximum start height. You see here on the altimeter. There is a little inset into the altimeter giving us height AGL. That's assuming this is actually quite a sexy computerized altimeter that's got a terrain map of the entire world built into it, which is technically possible, but not, it would be expensive. Okay, so I'm going to change my flap setting because I'm going to take a little bit of extra height, go back to a normal view, and I'm going to speed up, and I'm going to go through that start, but I'm going to go through at 3,000 feet. And start heading off on course. So I can level out a bit now. Can you see I'm at 2,950? I'm still getting lift. I've got to be careful not to go through slightly too high. But I've got 110 knots, which is a great speed to be going through the start. I'm moseying over to the left here to get a little bit more lift, because I want to get lift on my first leg of the journey. And I'm going to try not to mess this up, but if you look at this gauge, this is me approaching the start. The actual crossing point of the plane is the centre of the wings. There's a reason for that, which isn't ideal for a start, but it kind of makes sense in other things that the glider's doing, in particular circling. There you go. So I started at 2,941 feet against the maximum start of 3,000, and this nav panel has automatically moved us on to waypoint 1. Okay, and I'm doing 100 knots. And I shall normalise the view a little bit. The wind, if you can see the arrow in the middle of the nav panel, is still blowing down my starboard wing, which means these ridges, which are en route. This task, I'm pretty sure, is by Georg in the Soaring Club. It's a great task. He's very good at setting tasks. And it's not a coincidence that we've got weather that kind of makes sense for the task that's been set. We've got ridges kind of helping us on our way, but we're going to have to do some more complicated things like jump downwind and maybe jump upwind on a little bit. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to talk about, that's pretty much a lot of this stuff. So you've got a nav panel here showing you where to go. It automatically clicks onto the next waypoint. You can control that kind of thing manually. And down here, I'm going to zoom on it and try not to hit the rocks. This, see, we're currently at 3,300 feet. I'm at risk of hitting the rocks here. And it's saying waypoint 1 is at 722 feet. So that's its elevation relative to the sea, above mean sea level. And it is predicting we are going to arrive at plus 90 feet, plus 80 feet above that waypoint. The question I'm sure you've got is, how does it know that's 70 feet, right? But it knows the glide slope of the glider. And that's how it's calculating the 70 feet. So it's calculating we're going to get there at 792 feet or whatever, 70 feet above. But it has to assume we're flying at a certain speed. So how does it know the speed we're flying at? It does it using this McCready setting. Okay, so here, for every value here on the speed, there's a corresponding, on the lift, there's a corresponding speed to fly, because the stronger the lift is, the faster you're going to fly. So what I actually tell the glider is the glider pilot, I'm telling all these instruments, what do I think the lift will be? So here I'm saying, I think thermal strength will be 4 knots. And he goes, thermal strength is 4 knots. You should be flying at 110 knots, 111 knots. Because it makes sense to fly faster when the lift is strong. If the lift is really weak, like 1 knot, is saying, well, cruise along at 81 knots, because that will give you the optimum cross-country speed. You're not flying so fast that you're burning your height up all the time, because you're only going to be climbing in weak thermals. I go, well, you know, I'm feeling pretty confident. I'm going to say 4 knots. It is saying fly 111 knots. And if you can see, this waypoint arrival, AGL, i.e. above this ground level, this elevation of the waypoint, has now fallen by something like 900 feet. It's now saying, where previously it was saying, I think you'll get there with about 70 feet to spare. Now it is saying, because we're saying we're going to be flying at 111 feet, it's saying you're going to arrive there 980 feet below the waypoint. Okay, so fair enough. That is minus 1,000 feet. That is not something to worry about. I've got lost. So I'm temporarily uncertain of my position here. So I'll get back on these rocks here. I've still got the wind blowing from my right. And I'm not too worried about that 930 because I'm going to climb on the way there. I do need to get on and do that though. So can you see, I'm already climbing up these rocks. I've got the wind blowing. It's coming from in front of me to the right. That's this arrow here. But it is working against these rocks. I am climbing. And where previously said it was, I was about 1,000 feet too low. It's predicting I'm going to get there 1,000 feet too low. Now, if I zoom in on it, this goes, no problemo. Now you're 460 feet too low, which I know is still too low, but it's considerably better than the minus 1,000 feet it was saying before. Okay, so that's our arrival height is improving as we're taking this genuine lift. We are definitely gaining energy. When we're in the lift, we are anyway. I'll see if I can get a little bit more of it. And that will come down, and then it is up to the pilots to think, well, what height do I actually want to get to waypoint 1 at? If you remember, I'll show you the flight planner again. I mean, I'm all over the place here. I should have gone up and over this ridge onto this one, then up and over and onto that ridge, whereas I'm faffing around down here. But basically, we're getting to the point, let's have a look, minus 200 feet for that waypoint. We're getting to the point where we're actually going to reach that waypoint at the elevation that waypoint's at. We want to be higher than that, though. We want to get there and still be a couple of thousand feet, probably above the ground, so we can turn around it and head over here. Okay, so that is it in a nutshell. I've spoken about, you know, what are we basically doing, which is we load a flight plan, we choose a plane, we choose a tow plane, we choose the weather, we set the time of day, we all agree that, and when we do that in multiplayer, we all spawn into the sim at the same time, and you're just seeing one plane now, we will have 20 or possibly even 30 planes, gliders. All you'd see them in front of me and behind me if I was flying in this. There are other videos around you'll see on the SSC channel. It is good. Oh, I'm stalling. I'm still stalling. Boink. Anyway, that is it. Thanks for watching.